welcome you to the generations presentation here, the first one, and we'll introduce the generations, and then in the next presentations we will delve into each generation in more detail and discuss those a little bit more. I think y'all will find this quote humorous, if not enlightening, in the sense of when it was written. This was something that we could all probably say we may have heard yesterday or earlier today, a generation, an older person speaking to a younger person. But this was spoken by Socrates, who lived from 469 to 399 BC. And once again, the old saying, the more things change, the more they stay the same. What is a generation? Typically, I think a lot of us have heard that a generation, we think of it as about a 20-year span. There's a little bit of debate on this. It's not all demographers or generation researchers agree. Most will go with, or I should say, a lot of them will go with the 20-year span, but some would say that it's the time period between the birth of one generation and the next generation. Those children growing up and having their children. Markings of a generation, some of the things that identify a generation, usually it's a 20-year span. The generation cohort has a unique set of values. They look at their generation as a standard of comparison, and they're either idealistic, reactive, civic, or adaptive in their approaches to life and society and things occurring around them. Now, as we look at the generations, each of them is a cohort in brief. Here, the veteran generations span from the 20s to 1933. The generation probably our grandparents or great-grandparents at this point. World War II veterans are a real large cohort. The silent generation from 33 to 46, a small cohort. These were the Depression babies coming out of the Depression. So they kind of are a span between the veteran generation, the large generation, and then the largest generation, the baby boomers, from 46 to 64. Their generation kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit, and that's why they're called the silent generation, not because they're silent, but just because of the amount of people born during this time period versus the one that preceded and the one that followed them with the baby boom generation from the 40s to 64. Generation X from 1964 to 1980 is the one I belong to, born in 68. The Generation Y, or the millennials, from 1980 to 2000. Generation Z, the 2000 plus, those that are born from 2000 till now, have been referred to as Generation M, the mobile generation. We won't get into as much with this cohort just because there's a lot of information beginning to come out just now about them, but I'm sure you can observe seeing them with their cell phones and their little mobile devices, their Game Boys and their iPod Touches and PSPs and all these good things. Seem like they've always got some piece of technology in their hands. And I thought it'd be good if we ended this session on this good quote from Franklin Delano Roosevelt about generations. He said, referring to the veteran generation, "There is a mysterious cycle in human events. To some generations much is given, of other generations much is expected. This generation of Americans has a rendezvous with destiny." Think about your cohort and the different things that you face as a cohort and the things that you've had to deal with as a group. And we'll discuss some of those things more in depth as we go through this course.